Have you ever agreed to something and then literally 5 seconds later thought, wait, why did I just say yes to that? Well, welcome to today's explainer. We're going to whiteboard out the hidden psychological mechanisms that actually control our everyday decisions. I'm honestly so excited to guide you through this because, let me tell you, once you see these invisible forces at work, you can never unsee them.
Our source material today is nothing short of legendary. We're doing a comprehensive breakdown of Dr. Robert Cialdini's groundbreaking work, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. This book is basically the definitive guide to why people say yes based on over 35 years of rigorous research and even undercover observation. My goal today is to take his absolute most powerful concepts and make them super clear and, more importantly, highly actionable for you.
So, here's our roadmap. We're looking at 5 of Cialdini's key principles today: reciprocation, commitment and consistency, social proof, authority, and scarcity. And finally, we'll wrap things up with a crucial lesson on how to master your own decisions. Now, before we hit that very first principle, we really need to understand the bedrock of Cialdini's work. It's a concept he calls click-whir. Think of a mother turkey, right? She's fiercely protective, but her maternal instincts are triggered by literally one single sound: the cheep cheep of her chicks. If a baby chick makes the sound, she takes care of it. But get this, if a stuffed version of her natural enemy, a polecat, is pulled toward her on a string and it has a little tape recorder inside playing that exact cheep cheep sound, she will actually embrace the predator. It's crazy. Click-whir. The tape plays, the automatic response just engages. Now, we like to think we're way smarter than the turkey, right? But the ever-accelerating pace of modern life means we actually rely on our own click-whir shortcuts just to survive. We simply don't have the time to analyze every single thing. And guess what? Profiteers absolutely know this, and they use these shortcuts against us.
So let's start with our first principle. Section 1, reciprocity, the old give and take.
Reciprocation is this totally overpowering cultural role that says we absolutely must repay debts, favors, and get this, even uninvited gifts. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism. It allowed early humans to share resources without fear of losing out. And the wild part? It doesn't even require someone to explicitly ask for a favor for you to feel indebted. Just look at the data from the Disabled American Veterans Organization. Their standard mail appeal, it yielded an 18% response rate. Pretty standard. But when they included a simple, unsolicited gift, you know those little individualized gummed address labels, the success rate nearly doubled to 35%. That is huge. The sheer obligation of just receiving a gift puts the power entirely in the hands of the person giving it. And this trap was brilliantly illustrated in a really famous study by a researcher named Regan. So in the study, a subject is just sitting in a room with a guy named Joe. Joe leaves, comes back, and hands the subject a Coca-Cola that they never even asked for. Later on, Joe asks the subject to buy some raffle tickets. Well, the subjects who received that uninvited Coke ended up buying twice as many raffle tickets as the people who got nothing. Twice as many. Joe chose the initial favor, and then Joe chose the return favor. The subject was just trapped by the heavy psychological burden of debt. So how do we actually defend ourselves here? Look, you don't have to go live in a bunker and systematically reject every nice thing people do for you. First, just accept initial favors in good faith. But if you realize the quote-unquote favor was actually just an artifice designed to stimulate compliance, like, say, a salesperson's free sample that comes with a ridiculously heavy guilt trip, you must mentally redefine it as a compliance device. The rule of reciprocity says favors are to be met with favors. It does not require that tricks be met with favors. Once you redefine it in your head, you can freely just ignore the poll.
All right, let's move right along to our second principle. Section 2, commitment and consistency, hobgoblins of the mind. You see, we have this deep, driving, psychological desire to appear consistent with our past words, beliefs, and actions. Being inconsistent is generally viewed as indecisive or two-faced, right? Well, consistency, that's associated with intellectual strength. Just think about the strange paradox of the racetrack bettor. 30 seconds before putting down their money, bettors are super tentative and uncertain. But 30 seconds after buying the ticket, boom, they are suddenly incredibly optimistic and self-assured. Why? Because the mere act of taking a stand, of making a physical commitment, instantly rewires their brain. They literally have to convince themselves they made the right choice just to remain consistent. And compliance professionals, they know this inside and out. If they can get you to make a tiny, small commitment, you will naturally start acting in ways that stubbornly justify that stand later on. To combat this one, you really need to start listening to your body. Your very first defense is just recognizing that it is totally 100% okay to change your mind. But on a more practical level, pay attention to the warning signals right in your stomach. When you feel that awful pit in your stomach because you realize you're being trapped into a request by your own previous words, that is your cue. Reject foolish, rigid consistency. Just tell the requester exactly what they're doing and simply step away.
Okay, moving into our third principle. Section 3, the power of social proof. Truths are us.
This principle basically states that we determine what is correct by finding out what other people think is correct. It's like an automatic pilot device. If everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do, right? Well, that pilot can fly us straight into a mountain. Picture this scenario. A guy at a racetrack puts $100 on a 10-to-1 shot just to purposely manipulate the odds. The crowd, who are uncertain and desperately looking for cues, see this random horse suddenly become the early favorite. Then a rumor starts that someone knows something. Suddenly, a massive snowball of social proof happens, and the whole crowd blindly backs this horse. And what happens? The horse ends up running dead last with a bad leg. Social proof is dangerously powerful when we're unsure. It causes us to look to a crowd that honestly might be just as lost as we are.
So, here is your toolkit for spotting rigged social proof. Whenever you see a massive crowd flocking to a product, or maybe a website pops up showing you 100 people are looking at this right now, stop and ask yourself, is this information actually real? Are these people actually like me? You must aggressively monitor your social proof automatic pilot. When you realize the data is totally faked or the crowd is just panicking, you need to manually disconnect the pilot and take the controls yourself. Next up, Section 4, Obedience to Authority, Directed Deference. Society basically trains us from birth that obedience to proper authority is the right thing to do. And look, most of the time, following experts is highly beneficial. But this creates a massive vulnerability for us. Why? Because we are so easily duped not by actual authority, but by the mere symbols of authority. Think about the infamous Milgram study. Everyday people delivered what they genuinely thought were lethal electric shocks simply because a guy in a gray laboratory coat told them to. No questions asked. Con artists constantly use fake titles like doctor or judge just to get us to drop our guard. In another crazy study, 50% of drivers waited respectfully behind a luxury prestige car that was stalled at a green light. They never even touched their horns. Yet put an older economy car in that same spot, they honked furiously. We are just so easily intimidated by the illusion of status. So the absolute crucial point in breaking this trance of blind obedience is to ask yourself one simple, powerful question. Is this authority truly an expert? This question acts like a mental circuit breaker. It forces you to direct your attention away from the expensive tailored suit or the fancy title and look toward genuine evidence. Ask yourself how knowledgeable they actually are in this specific field. I mean, a famous actor might look incredibly authoritative in a TV commercial, but are they a relevant authority on the financial software they're peddling? Probably not. Always demand real credentials before you comply. All right, let's move to our fifth principle, which honestly is perhaps the most emotionally overwhelming one, the scarcity principle, the rule of the few. This one plays on a really profound human vulnerability. Our intense fear of losing a freedom completely overrides our logical desire to just gain an item. Opportunities just seem way more valuable to us when their availability is limited. Consider the total irony revealed by the famous chocolate chip cookie study. Researchers gave subjects cookies from either a jar with 10 cookies or a jar with only 2. Naturally, the scarce cookies were rated as significantly more desirable. People literally said they'd be willing to pay a greater price for them. But here is the real kicker. The scarce cookies did not taste one whit better. The joy wasn't in actually experiencing the scarce commodity, it was purely in possessing it. You see, scarcity literally causes a physical panic. The blood rushes up, your focus narrows, and logic just goes right out the window. So you have to use that exact physical arousal, that sudden agitation you feel during a limited time offer countdown, as your built-in warning cue to just stop and breathe. Then logically ask yourself if you want the item for its utility, to actually eat it, drive it, or use it, or if you just want to possess it so you can beat the competition. Always remember, a scarce cookie doesn't taste better. A scarce car doesn't drive better. You have to force yourself to think rationally. And that brings us perfectly to our final section, master your decisions, take back control. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, looking at the hidden levers that constantly influence our behavior.
The principles of reciprocity, consistency, social proof, authority, and scarcity, these are all necessary click-word shortcuts that actually help us navigate a really complex world. We genuinely need them. But because they operate on automatic pilot, they are highly exploitable by profiteers. True power, it comes from awareness. It comes from recognizing that rising tide of panic or that sudden pit in your stomach and realizing that someone is trying to pull your strings. And once you see the strings, you can finally cut them.
Which leads me to leave you with one final provocative question. Armed with this new knowledge, will your next yes be truly yours? To ensure that it is, and to continue mastering the hidden psychology of your world, make sure you hit subscribe to the Edge Library. We're dedicated to bringing you the most powerful, visually structured summaries of world-changing ideas. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.